How's it going, everybody? PK Investing here. Another month has come and gone, and QYLD has raised its monthly dividend yet again. This might seem pretty great, but there's more to it than meets the eye. In my previous QYLD video, I explained how the income fund works. If you haven't already, I highly recommend you watch it in order to maximize your understanding of this video, and you'll also learn how QYLD generates the premium needed to keep generously paying its shareholders. Speaking of getting paid, in this video I'll also go over my own QYLD position and show you how much I'll be making from their latest dividend, so be sure to stick around until the end. But the main thing I want to go over in this video are risks associated with QYLD, and how some things that seem too good to be true are more complicated than one might think. Let's get into it. To start off, we have to remember that QYLD is a covered call ETF, meaning that the primary source of income generation comes from writing covered calls on the Nasdaq 100 index. And while this can result in a steady flow of option premium, it also ends up being the greatest risk factor associated with QYLD. In my previous video, I went over the 3 potential outcomes of a covered call sold by QYLD. We can see that the best case scenario ends up being the one on the left, where the index finishes at the exact same strike price it started at. In this case, QYLD keeps the full premium, like always, and the index price remains unchanged relative to the beginning of the month. Looking at the right side, these 2 scenarios aren't necessarily bad, but they aren't completely good either. When the Nasdaq 100 index ends below the strike price, the premium is still collected, but now the value of the underlying assets has decreased. And when the index ends above the strike price, the premium is collected, but QYLD has to settle in cash. For both of these scenarios, the larger the difference between the final index price and the strike price, the greater the potential loss for QYLD, and ultimately, you, the shareholder. But remember, the premium serves as a buffer, so if the difference between the final index price and the strike price is small, then the premium that QYLD collected offsets the downside. But if the final difference is too large, that is, if it's larger than the premium, then that results in a net loss. The key thing to note here is that you want the final index price to be as close to the strike price as possible, since that will maximize the amount of premium that QYLD keeps, and it maximizes the amount of dividend income that you can receive each month. But it's still a little more complicated than you might think. Let's dive into it a bit more. As we all know by now, QYLD is an income ETF. Its purpose is to generate income, and to do that, it needs to sport a relatively high yield. I've got this excerpt from their tax primer, and I'll summarize it for you. By design, the dividend a shareholder receives from QYLD every month is equal to half of the premium income that QYLD generated that month. But there's a stipulation, that the distribution is capped at 1% of the fund's net asset value. You might have noticed that for the past few months, the monthly yield for QYLD has been 1%. Well, it might have been 0.99 or 0.98%, but it's been very close to 1%. That's because, as they also state in the tax primer, QYLD can choose to have part of the dividend be treated as return of capital. For those of you who don't know, return of capital is just that. They return to you, the shareholder, some of the money that you used to buy the share of QYLD. But you still get to keep the share itself. Keep in mind that return of capital isn't taxed at all because it's literally your money being given back to you. But the point here is that the 1% yield that's been happening for the past few months isn't purely a result of the performance of QYLD. Rather, it's a combination of premium income and your own money being given back to you. In other words, the high yield isn't entirely due to the success of QYLD and its covered call selling strategy. Is this a big deal to you? Let me know down in the comments section. For me, it isn't really. I understand that there will be ups and downs, but I recognize that QYLD thrives on volatility and the mentality that stocks only go up. As long as the Nasdaq 100 index keeps moving along, QYLD will continue to generate premium, and it will continue to supplement their dividend with return of capital in order to pad their yield and attract new investors. Alright, that was a lot of information. Fortunately, this next part is pretty light. Let's take a look at my own QYLD position. I've got 519 shares at the moment. QYLD raised the dividend by 0.007 cents, so the current dividend is 22.99 cents per share, and that puts the yield at around 1% every month. See, remember what I said before? Please note that the reason the yield is over 1% in my table is because I took the screenshot a few days after the dividend was announced, and before then the yield was around 0.99%, so it was very close to 1%. At the end of the day, QYLD will be paying me about $119 for this month. I know that this was a pretty information-dense video and you might still have some questions. If so, drop a comment down below. I'd love to have a discussion. I'm also very active on Gen X Dividend Investors Discord. There's a unique channel dedicated to ETFs, and we've had many interesting talks there about QYLD and many other ETFs. You can also use the search function to search comments made by keywords or by users. If you want to know what we've been talking about regarding QYLD, that'll be a good place to look. In addition, I've made a few other QYLD videos, so feel free to check those out. I'll leave a link to my QYLD playlist in the description below, along with a link to the Discord. And I'll also link to all the articles I used today, so you can go more in depth if you like. I plan to make more QYLD videos in the future, so subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that bell notification to be notified whenever I release a new video. Take care, and I hope to speak with you again real soon. I am not a financial advisor. Investing always involves risk. This video was created for entertainment purposes only.